Welcome to Come to the Brink. I'm Zoe Flowers, and this is a space for those of us navigating profound life changes like loss, trauma, caregiving, and transformation. It's about what happens when everything you thought was solid crumbles beneath you and you're forced to rebuild. If you've ever felt like you're standing on the brink, this is the space for you. Welcome. Welcome back to Come to the Brink with Zoe Flowers, the space where we gather in truth, where we talk about the grief that lingers, the moments that shape us, and the tools that carry us forward when the ground disappears beneath us. Today's guest has lived many lives inside one. Debbie Weiss is the best-selling author of On Second Thought, Maybe I Can, and The Sprinkle Effect. So for over 40 years, she cared for her father, her son, and later her husband. And like so many of us caregivers, she lost herself a little bit inside of those roles. Then at 50, Debbie made a choice to start living for herself again. 9 years later, her husband passed, and the shifts she had already made became her lifeline. Now she helps women reclaim their power and possibility through her sprinkle effect method. See it, sprinkle it, shift it. Her story reminds us that resilience isn't something that you learn after the loss. It's something you build along the way. So let's come to the brink together. So Debbie, welcome. Thank you for joining. Is there anything you want to say to sort of start us off?
Oh, just thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Looking at you just makes me smile and listening to you. So I can't wait to chat.
Yay. I love that. I love that. So I always like to start at the root of things and to sort of get an understanding of who the people I talked to were as little ones, before they became the adult that I see before me. So tell me just a little bit about who you were. Who was little Debbie? Were you always a caregiver? Were you the person that picked up stray animals and brought them home? I know I definitely was that little kid girl.
Well, I'm the oldest of two children, and I don't know, I think it's, the birth order kind of thing. Like, as the oldest, I felt like I had to make sure my brother was okay. And I remember even when I was about 12 or 13 and my parents uh, separated 3 different times. They came back together, they separated again, back together 3 different times. And I felt it was my responsibility to figure out how to fix their marriage. I was going to be the fix it person. Of course, then I didn't realize what I was doing.
Sure.
But little Debbie,
I
besides
know, I
being like
know.
a cake, right?
I know. I don't even know if they have that now. Yeah.
I've seen the truck every once in a while somewhere, but anyhow,
Yeah.
I was very um shy, insecure, had a load of self-doubt, would never speak up other than with the people that I knew and were very comfortable with. With those people, I was loud and boisterous. But I always struggled with my weight, and so I felt like I was always being judged of the way I looked,
Mhm.
and so I preferred not to be seen.
I cannot even believe that with, like, even though we've only had this only our second conversation, that's just so, hard to believe.
I know, it's very ironic. It really, really is. I mean, when when I started, doing podcasts and speaking, public speaking and that kind of stuff, my mother and my brother were, like, in shock.
Mm.
Because, they knew who I was, and I try to say that to, my sons who maybe don't have a lot of confidence, or I see that they're afraid to make a phone call, ask a question,
Yeah.
and I can't believe that used to be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the change is unbelievable, and I know that a lot of it just comes from life,
Yeah.
living life, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually mirror some of those same things, like the weight thing, and certainly when I first started reading poetry, I would write my name on the list at open mics and then leave before my name was called. 'Cause I
Mm.
was, like, so shy to get up there and, like, read my poetry and do all of those things, so, yeah, I definitely relate to that. How do you see those early experiences echoing through the life that you've built now?
The self-doubt, it's still there.
Mm,
It just changes. You know,
mm,
I still, even though my weight is better than it's been in a very long time,
mhm,
it's still not where I want it to be, and I still so have that comparison trap that
yeah,
I the thing is, now I know it and I understand it, and I know that my weight doesn't define me
mhm,
for sure,
mhm,
but, there's still always that little girl Debbie,
yeah, yeah,
inside. I
yeah,
just have to be aware when she's coming out
yeah,
and, remind myself and talk to myself and change my thinking.
mhm, mhm. And as we talked about, initially, you spent decades caring for other people. First your father, then, your son, your husband. So what did that long season teach you about endurance and about love that asks for everything, especially from women?
Oh boy, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
It so, I became a caregiver to my dad when I was 17 and he had just turned 46. He had a massive stroke. Luckily, he survived, but he became permanently disabled and my parents soon divorced and I became his primary caregiver. And honestly, when that journey first started, it was kind of empowering. It was scary,
Mhm.
but what I found was I had to step up. I had to step in the spotlight, which little Debbie was afraid to do because I had to find my voice to advocate.
Yes.
And I could do that for my father because that was different than doing it for myself. The idea that if I didn't speak up to protect him, to make sure that he received the right treatment or, whatever it was, then I would be doing him a disservice. And so I can remember those moments where I was so afraid to ask a question or question authority or whatever it was, and just really willing myself to do it because the idea that he suffered because of my insecurities, I could not handle. And that was a gift initially. And it really gave me self-confidence that I could handle something that I could never have imagined I would be handling, let's say, in my early 20s when
Right.
my friends were off, like, partying and living a carefree life, first
Yeah.
time on their own, that kind of thing. And I had moments of that, don't get me wrong, but it was always there. That responsibility was always lurking,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
And my dad lived for 30 years, and 30 years was a very long time to be that person, that his his person who
Yeah.
was there for anything and everything that he needed.
Yeah.
And
And
I got I let me just say, I got burnt out and resentful and angry. Um, it did shift from kind of what I felt in my 20s as empowering. It did turn into something that I viewed as a burden.
I would imagine so. I mean, so were you in your 20s when you started? Or I mean, what's the difference, right, between 17 and 20, really? But, was there anyone that helped you at that time?
So it did start when I was 17 because I wound up changing my whole college situation, career, uh, over over my dad's situation, and so I had gone away to college, and then I couldn't handle it. My mother, even though she cared for my father, but not really in the most loving way, I think it was, stemmed back to their issues that they were having when they were separated. My mother was only 39 years old, which
Mhm.
is so crazy for me to think now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I was still his person, but after when I turned 21 and I graduated from college, my mother found a place for my father to live.
Okay.
And so when that happened and they officially got divorced, my mother was basically out of it. I mean, she would be there to answer any questions that I had, but she was basically out of it. And my dad, back then, this was like 1985.
Sure.
And so things were a lot different. There weren't all these assisted living, independent living things, thank goodness, that you can find everywhere.
Mhm.
So back then, we lived in Long Island, and the only place that my mother could find for him to live was in New Jersey.
Mhm.
Not that it's that far, but if you ever been around that area, there's a
Yeah.
lot of traffic. So it should only take you like an hour 15, but be
Yes.
ready for 2.5 hours. So, luckily, that location was near my aunt, my father's sister. So, at least they were there to, like, check in on him when he lived in that location. I had to move around many different places for many different reasons over the years. So, I did have my aunt who was there when I would get frustrated, uh, would try and visit him regularly, more regularly in the last, year or so of his life. But it still came down to me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I was the one he was calling all the time. I was the one, if he needed to go to the doctor, the hospital, the whatever, on holidays, to be the one to figure out how to change my own life, to pick him up, to bring him to wherever we were going, to bring him back, like, all that kind of stuff, which, you know, each individual thing, no big deal. But like I said, over time, and certainly then when I started to have my children, and then my oldest son at 2 was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and so that was, wow, a completely different type of caregiving, but yet I still had my dad. So, it was, it was rough.
Yeah. And what were you just kind of doing everything to just get through it, just pushing through, or did you have moments of we weren't even talking about self-care really at that time, but if you were to look at it back then, were there things that you were doing to sort of replenish yourself?
No, and
Mm,
that was the biggest mistake I ever made, and that's something that I didn't realize until much later. And
okay.
because I wasn't taking care of myself, right? Because now I had my dad, I had, my son who had special needs. My younger son is only 20 months younger. So I had him, and I work, and I
Yeah.
have an insurance agency. And so then I have to worry about my employees and my customers. And that's, what I was there for. As you said earlier, I think so many of us as women, we just do it all, right? We're
Do it
supposed to
all.
be superwoman.
Mm,
I'm like putting out
mhm.
fires, figuring out what everyone needs. And
Yeah.
then, when the kids are in school, it's like, oh, you need this for this party and this activity. It spirals out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you have any language, or I should say, when did the language of grief come into your space? Because I have been saying throughout this whole process that grief is a portal. It's definitely something that takes us on a transition from who we were to, who we have to become to get through it. And so, did you have a language of grief, or when did that language come into your mind?
I don't think that I did.
Mm,
It wasn't until much later that
mhm.
I understood that really I was also grieving the fact that I no longer had a father, right? So many times when we're in midlife and our parents are much older, there's role reversal, right? We're the ones taking care of our parents.
Yeah.
However, at 17, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And 17, I still needed my father.
Yeah.
And even though he was physically there and he could talk and he was like with it wasn't like that. But yet he was a changed person.
Yeah.
And I never grieved that loss.
Yeah. Or
And
I'm wondering about the loss of your girlhood as well.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I had to grow up very quickly. I think I had to grow up very quickly, even when my parents separated. There was, like I said earlier, I thought that I had to fix it.
Yeah.
I started trying to fix it. And then later on, after they divorced, and like I said, with my father, and then my mother remarried for a very short time to someone who was a big jerk. And my brother was living at home, and like that was a lot of tension. And I was trying to fix that situation. So I just feel like you're right. I felt, wow, why me? Like, oh my gosh, I'm so young, and I feel like I am carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And I felt sorry for myself. I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yes, you had a right to be resentful and all of those things. So when did you I know that we said, at 50 things started to turn, but is that really when things started to like kick in? Like when was the first moment where you realized, okay, I need to make some kind of change? Like what was the lead up?
So my dad passed away about a year or so before I turned 50.
Okay.
And, you know, there's that guilt. You feel incredible grief, but then there was some sense of relief, especially because the last 6 months of his life, I really tried to visit very, very often. He was in a nursing home in the last few years, and certainly the months leading up as he was deteriorating. And now that's over, right? And that frees up all this time.
Yes.
So you feel relief in that sense, but then you feel guilty because you feel relief
Yes.
because it's not like I wanted him to die. It's not like I wished that on him,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But so then how can I feel this sense of relief? So it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
After he died and when I did turn 50, my girlfriends insisted we go away for the weekend to celebrate my birthday. And I was like, how can I leave? My kids were like preteens at that point, and my husband was okay, but my husband had some anxiety, and he was another one. I would basically just have to point him in the direction and tell him what to do and what's today and what's on the schedule, and here's give him the rundown. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't leave my husband with this stuff for the weekend, and what'll happen, yada yada. My girlfriends, thank goodness, insisted, and I listened to them. And the minute that we met at the airport, the laughter started. I stopped worrying about what was going on in my house. They'll all survive. I really thought, I think at the time it was like international calls when we were going to Bermuda were expensive, and I was like, "Okay, I'll like talk to you Sunday night." And
Okay.
so I was so nervous that I wasn't going to be I was incommunicado and all these things. Oh my gosh, it was fabulous. Fabulous. And on that trip, I think I realized I had lost myself. I don't laugh. Like, I used to be known for my laugh. I had like a loud kind of cackle, and everyone would joke, "Oh, we always know where Debbie is. We can always hear her," because I'm a laughy kind of person. So I'd be chuckling a lot. And I said to my friends, "Did I used to be known for my laugh?" I thought it might have been something I made up. And they just looked at me incredulously like, "Are you kidding that you're asking this? Of course you did." And I thought, "Man, I don't even know who I am anymore." Because I never the caregiving started when I was basically still a child, and I didn't know outside of, my roles and responsibilities,
Wow.
who was I as a person? I had no identity as a person. And my father died with a ton of regrets, which he always talked about, and my mother also talks a lot about her regrets, and I thought, I don't wanna be that person. I don't wanna be that person at the end of their life looking back with regret of, coulda, shoulda, woulda kinda thing, and 50, like 50, half a
Yeah.
century, it was like, boom, hit me in the face.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what that meant, what needed, there was everything needed to change. Where do you start? What do I do? And I don't think it was, oh, I turned 50, the heavens open up. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I didn't. I came home from that trip and said, well, I got to start somewhere. And at that point, I was more than 100 pounds overweight. And I said, that's where I've got to start because, it's not just about how I look. Now I'm 50. Like, I want to be around for my kids, for my grandkids. I've got to take care of my health. And that's kind of where I started. And when I came back and I started really setting boundaries and realizing they'll survive without me because, going away showed me,
Mm.
they'll be okay. They'll be okay. The world will not end if they don't do one thing they're not supposed to, or, whatever it is, you got to let it kind of loosen up the grip and take control back of your own life and let them kind of take control a little bit of theirs.
So before that time, you hadn't taken girls' trip,
Nope.
solo, anything from
No,
17 to 50.
correct.
Wow.
I mean, I shouldn't say that. Maybe in my 20s before I had a family,
Or
I'm sure I did, took a couple of different trips, but nothing
yeah,
major that I can think of.
yeah. And the thing that is always so interesting to me is where are the people to say, "Hey, I'll take that for you." But no, it's just like more responsibility, more just the expectations that, again, as you said, that the woman is just a superwoman.
Yep, just the superwoman. I could do it all. And then when you can't or you come crashing down, you feel like a failure, right? And it's just so wrong. It's just so wrong. I mean, I started having at different times, different physical manifestations of the stress. My eyes started twitching out of nowhere, which I had never had before. I
Mhm.
started having heart palpitations. It was scary and it was all the stress. Someone would basically, one of my family members would look at me funny and I would fly off the handle because that anger, that stress, that burnout was always there right under the surface.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you what happened with the anger, like, where you put that in that.
Yeah. What wound up eventually, after 50, I think I did it a little bit beforehand. Exercise for me, exercise that I like,
Mm,
has always, besides the physical benefits, it's been a real help with my mental wellness.
mhm.
I can walk into for me, I like to dance, so back then I was jazzercising, going to jazzercise class all the time.
Sure.
And yes, it still exists. People are like, "Really? That's still around?" Yes, it's still around. And I would walk in and I would have walked out of my house and I'm so angry and I'm, so tightly wound. And sometimes it would be the first song that came on and I'd relax. And sometimes it took me till the third song. But it always worked. I always walked out of there. It was like, just taking a deep breath and being able to let it go because you had to pay attention. Well, you didn't have to pay attention to the music, but I did. And so I'm singing the songs. I'm trying to figure out how to move my feet and my arms, all the things.
True.
And the rest of it just flew out of my mind. And that's what I needed. And I would always come home a better person after I went to class. And when I came back from my trip, I realized that self-care also, it's not just, you
Mhm.
know, getting a massage and all that stuff. It's also for me was setting boundaries. Okay, guys, I go to jazzercise Monday, Wednesday, blah, 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 from this time to this time. If you need me, you can ask me something before, you can ask me something after. I'm not going, and they learned.
Mhm.
They
And
learned.
I wondered if it changed, so you set boundaries. So did that change how you felt about the caregiving? when you started to pour into
Yes.
a little
I
bit?
mean, definitely. At that point, it had eased up in the sense that my dad had passed away, so I was no longer caring for my father. My son, when he hit his teens, everything kinda changed and got, harder. It was hard all along for him and me and all of us, but he started struggling with different mental illness, depression, and anxiety, and a lot of, angry outbursts, and it was very, very difficult to navigate. And so, I don't know, it was caregiving, but, then I'm worried about everybody else in the house, right? What can I do to help son number 1, son number 2? My son and my husband were very much alike, so that was, a little bit of a struggle there. And so I think at that point, it kind of I think the anger had dissipated, and at that time in my life, I was solely focused on my son. What
Mm,
can I do for my son? And I think as a parent, any kind of parent, I mean, I don't mean any kind. I mean, you don't have to have a child with necessarily special needs, but you know that when your child is suffering, um, you know, you're going to do everything you can to make the world right.
yeah,
And so I think I was on a mission.
yeah. And so you talk about reinventing yourself before loss
Mm.
and how that's essential to surviving after the loss. Or can you talk about why you think that is so?
I think I think in my case, I don't know if it's essential before everybody's loss. In my case, that is what helped me navigate what then happened down the road with my husband. So after I turned 50, I came back. I did wind up losing about 90 pounds. I have basically kept it off over the last, I don't even know, not, let's say it was took me 3.5 years to lose 90 pounds. So let's say it was about 9 years ago. And it's the first time in my life that I have basically kept it off. Yes, I've gone up 10 pounds, but then I don't let it go any further kind of thing.
Huh?
And then from there, I just started making changes, stopped making excuses
Mhm.
because I was telling myself, woe is me, poor me, there's nothing I can do. These things have happened to me in my life for whatever reason. This is my path, and I have no control. And so accepting that I was telling myself a story really is what began to change my life. I never understood or heard or was familiar with the term a victim mentality,
Uh-huh.
but I had it big time, and
Mhm,
I had no idea that I had it.
mhm.
And that realization was honestly probably the biggest realization that I've had in my life, because I was telling myself the lie that many of us do, that because of my circumstances, because of my age, because, you can name all the things that we all tell ourselves,
Yes.
change is not possible for me. This is just my lot in life. That's where I was. It's not so bad. A lot of people have it a lot worse than I do, which is 1,000% true. But does that mean that I am just going to accept and settle? And I realized, no,
Mhm.
these things have happened. They'll continue to happen. Different things happen to all of us. That is the definition of life, right? All have highs and lows and struggle with grief and resiliency and all the things. I'm going to be the one now to figure out how I want to steer my ship for the
Mhm.
rest of this journey.
Mhm. And is that how the sprinkle effect was born or
Well, it was eventually,
okay.
but it was and it still is. I don't know why I'm speaking in the past tense because I'm still on that journey.
Okay.
that I started. I'm 62 now, so that I started over a decade ago.
Mm.
And it was exciting because I just started reading something different, listening to podcasts, believing that, hey, that person did it. Why can't I?
Mm.
Right? And that's really what I just kept telling myself. Well, let me try. Let me figure it out. I didn't have a grand plan. I didn't have any idea what I wanted my life to look like. I didn't know. But you know what? Just the act of taking some action, even though in the beginning it's passive, it's reading, it's listening, but then I took a course and I was exposed to, the whole mindset concept.
Yes.
And, just those building blocks, just those little steps, little sprinkles
Yeah.
of taking some kind of action, just the smallest thing.
Yeah.
You just feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
I am doing something in a different direction to help myself.
Yeah.
And then it builds,
Yeah.
right? The momentum builds
Yeah.
and you do become empowered. And so, oh my gosh, it's such a long story, but it eventually led me to, well, let me just tell you, I'll tell you where it led me. It led me to up to a point where I was going to start a business to help caregivers learn how to prioritize their self care.
Right.
And I worked on that for a couple of years, only to discover that when working with caregivers, fellow caregivers, that they want to talk about their caregiving journey and how hard it is. And I completely understand that, but it was too much for me to handle because I'm empathetic and it just left me feeling low,
Yeah.
which I didn't
Get it.
need any more of that in my life.
Yeah.
So I pivoted, and long story short, it led me to I want to write a book, or I didn't really want to write a book, but people were telling me I needed to write a book to get my story out there because I wanted to share this message that I had learned, which is, this whole victim thing, and stop making excuses as I did for the majority of my life. And I'm telling you that there is another way. And if it took me over 50 years to learn it, I'm halfway smart. There's got to be other women out there who don't realize, who are doing the same thing that I did. So, how am I going to reach those people?
Right.
And that's where the idea of the book came in.
Yes.
I didn't have any background in writing a book. I am I'm actually a CPA by trade. I am a numbers girl, not a words girl.
Okay.
And, at that time that I was coming around to this, my husband had become increasingly, uh, struggling with both physical and mental illnesses and had stopped working. But his depression and anxiety was really becoming an issue. And he winds up eventually he becomes hospitalized for his mental illness. And when he's released, he is really open to therapy, which in his life he had never been. He was like the prize student in his groups afterwards. He was hopeful. He was just a different person. It really, really, really helped him. And at this time, I had met a woman who I had heard on a podcast who helped first time authors get their story out there. I listened to her, connected. I said, okay, I heard this woman for a reason. I'm going to reach out to her. I did. I I really loved her. She was launching a small group program to help women write their stories. And I was scared out of my mind. And I was toying with it because I had all this self-doubt about that I couldn't do it, that I wouldn't do it well, who was gonna read my book. All the self-doubt, all the negative talk was in there, and so I was scared. I
Mhm.
was scared. And just as I was about to say, "Yes, I'm gonna join," out of the blue, unrelated to any of his other physical illness, my husband was diagnosed with terminal blood cancer. And I was seeing a therapist at the time. And after it happened, I said to her, well, obviously, I am not joining this group. This is not the time, right? This is, I don't know
Right.
what the future holds. I mean, oh my goodness,
Right.
how selfish. Like, that's ridiculous.
Mm.
And she said, I disagree. She said, you are going to need something separate for yourself, unrelated to everything that's going to go on. And I said, well, what if I can't attend 1 week or more? What if there's homework and I don't do it? What if, what if? And she said, who cares?
Right. Oh,
I thought, okay,
right. Who cares?
who cares? And I did it. And it took me a while to kind of get my feet wet and understand kind of what direction I was headed in with the whole book idea. And I didn't believe I was going to really do it when I joined. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. My goal is to finish my manuscript, blah, 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 in 4 months. But I'm thinking, nah, I don't really think that's happening. But I did get to a certain point where I thought, oh, look, I've already written 10,000 words. That's a lot of words. Maybe I can do this. And from then on in, I really prioritized it, not above my husband, not above my family, but just like the self-care, just like the jazzercise, I made sure, here's when I'm gonna write, and it could be different every day, and if my husband was in the hospital, I would bring the stuff with me, and when he was sleeping or he went for a test, I wrote. If we were home, I got up at 5:30 in the morning, and I wrote at 5:30 in the morning before he woke up, or, whatever, if in the middle of the afternoon, but I was very, very intentional about making sure that it happened, that the writing time happened. I really, if possible, never miss the group because it filled me up. It was hard, right? The writing process was really hard, especially because I've never done anything like this before. But boy, was she right, because I'll tell you, we went through some incredibly hard times in 6-month period of time. From the time that my husband was diagnosed until he passed away was 6 months. And his mental illness, he really relapsed big time, and, of course, the cancer and the physical part was really tough, but in his case, the mental illness was much harder,
Okay.
much, much harder, and so it was very, very difficult time, and learning something new, focusing on something just for myself saved me
That's what I was feeling as you were talking. It really felt like the group and the writing process, like, saved your life.
completely, and since then, since he passed away,
Mm,
the same thing.
mm,
When he died, I was 3 chapters shy of finishing. I was part of the group was, they were helping with the editing process. He passed away on December 30th, 2022, and my first draft was due to the editor January 14th, 23, 2 weeks later.
mm.
And of course, they said to me, "Don't be ridiculous. We're gonna extend the deadline," obviously. And after, someone dies and everybody gathers and is there for you. And as we know, everyone else goes back to their regular life, but your life will never be regular again,
Right.
especially when it's your life partner.
Yeah.
It's different than a parent,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you created this life together. It's your partner, you're talking. It's very different. Let's just say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so after everybody left, it was, probably January 7th. And, I'm sitting here saying, crying, right? Grieving and thinking to myself, you know what? The writing process saved me over the last 6 months. It's going to save me now too.
Mm.
And I did it. I finished on January 14th and submitted, my first draft. But it saved me, It all depend I have someone who said, "Oh, look, she took her husband's demise and capitalized on it." What? That's not it at all. It really the whole thing was cathartic and we all know we've been there when we're wallowing. And
Yeah,
not that I didn't deserve to wallow, by the way.
exactly.
I did, and
Right.
and I was grieving. I was absolutely grieving.
Yeah.
But just like when he was dying, this allowed me to get out of where I was in life and focus on something else. And I also found that, then I knew that my book was going to be published August 9th. And so then it became exciting, right? Because this is something brand new. I don't never did anything about this, know anything about this. Now it's the cover. Now it's how do you want the page numbers to be and all the things.
Yeah.
And in the end, I decided I need a party.
Uh,
And I had like 60 people at a book launch party.
right.
And my sons were the MCs. And my brother came from out of town and participated and, like, interviewed me. And it was really like it was just a celebration that all of us needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that book will always be special to me because it saved me in many, many ways.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the title of both of your books, so the Maybe I Can, because even to me, when you talked about, like, taking the first steps, the first sprinkle, I think even that question or not even a question, I mean, it's a question and I think it's a response, like, "Maybe I can? Yeah, maybe I can." Like, even that was just like a sprinkle, like, even just that thought, instead of being like, all the reasons why I can't, like you said, it's like, maybe I can."
Exactly, exactly. I mean, that's where it came from. It's called "On Second Thought, dot, 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 maybe I can." Because my whole life, if something was presented to me, and it could be a small thing like, "Do you wanna learn how to crochet?" "No, I don't do that." "Nope, nope, I don't do that. I'm not good at crafts. I'm not creative. I'm not" it's like so that is always my first knee jerk reaction. "Nope, that doesn't work for me." But then you know? On second thought, if you give it a few beats, maybe I can. Why not? What's the worst thing that can happen? I stink at it?
Yeah,
Just the act of trying makes you feel better. And what I've learned over the last decade plus is that when you push through your fear and you do things that you think you can't do, and then you can, you discover something about yourself that you never knew existed.
absolutely.
And I've found that every major step I've made is by pushing through fear and finding what was on the other side that was actually meant for me.
Pushing through fear. So because I was thinking about asking you, what are some of the sort of first steps that you could offer to people for, who might be in that in between space or might be in the no, I'm not this kind of person space. So that first step you just said, pushing through the fear is a step. Is there another step that you can think of that you can offer?
I think it is first of all, you have to recognize when you're doing it, right? I think that is the hardest part.
Mhm.
I had no idea that my thoughts weren't right.
Mhm.
I just thought I thought it. So why am I even questioning it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is really the first step because if you don't notice, you can't change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it could be, I think, like when it comes to fear, we're all afraid. We're not going to ever make the fear go completely away.
Yeah.
But I think if you break it down to something into smaller, bite sized, manageable steps, then it becomes easier. Then you see, oh, okay, I did this little piece. So if I did this, maybe I can do that. And maybe I can do that.
Mhm.
It's much easier to just sprinkle in small things. You know, we all want to make these big sweeping changes, which is great, but it doesn't start with, turning your life upside down in a minute. It's not going to happen that way.
Yeah. I totally agree, and what you're talking about is a slow and steady practice, and also, I think a practice of listening and responding is also what I'm hearing in your story. Um, were there any so you talked about podcasts and you talked about books. I know who my favorite sort of mindset authors are. Do you have any main books or that really shifted your thinking?
I love Jen Sincero. Did we talk about that? Do you know who she
Oh,
is? The badass girl?
no.
Oh my gosh.
Who is this?
So, all right. So she has a series of books, but the first one is You Are a Badass.
Okay.
Jen, her last name is Sincero.
Like,
And the thing that resonated is that I'm not a science person. And when I start reading something about mindset or anything, and you're explaining the science, like some people love that.
mhm,
I can't stand it. Then it's like my mind goes la, 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 and I just can't get through the book.
sure.
So her book really tells her story in a way that it's small, concise chapters. She is funny as anything and just practical and makes you feel like, yeah, why not? Why can't I do it?
Right.
So I loved, loved, loved her books. In particular, like I said, she has a series of them. So
Okay. And podcasts that you were listening to at that.
podcasts at the time, I was listening to, Elizabeth Benton and Primal Potential, and the reason I started listening to her was because she had lost a lot of weight, I think like 130 pounds or whatever, and also had paid off a lot of debt, and money issues were, something I was concentrating on at the time, so I started listening to her, and she was actually the person whose mindset course I took. I don't really listen to her, she's changed a little bit, over the years, and I also listen sometimes to the Mindset Mentor
Okay.
podcast.
Yeah. Familiar with that.
Yeah.
And so you have 2 books, On
Yep,
Second Thought, Maybe I Can,
yep.
and The Sprinkle Effect. What else do you have going on right now?
So, the sprinkle effect is, it's 15 chapters of different things that you sprinkle into your life,
Mhm,
like belief, self-belief, action, accountability, joy, curiosity, those kinds of things.
mhm,
And one of the things that I had discovered that I was another thing that I was like, obviously, I'm very judgmental, right? I was like, gratitude practice? What the heck is that's ridiculous. Obviously, I'm grateful for my house. I'm grateful for my kids. And like, I'm going to say that every day. And you're telling me my life is going to change. Like, I thought that was some kind of nonsense
nonsense,
that the woo woo world made up.
right?
Yep. I was like, this is dumb. And then and then my coach at the time sent me a gratitude journal as a gift, and I was
Yes.
so annoyed. I was like, "Really? Now it's a gift. Now you're gonna ask me how I like it. I can't lie. I gotta do this dumb thing." And so I start filling out the journal. It gives you the journal she sent me, has daily prompts.
Sure.
And so I would answer them pretty much in the same way every day, thinking, this is dumb, this is dumb. And one day I'm out walking my dog and I happened to take my nose out of my phone and looked up and happened to notice how blue and beautiful the sky was.
Mm, mm,
And I thought, wow, oh, that's something new I can write in my gratitude journal tomorrow morning that
mm.
I noticed this. And then I started noticing, not consciously trying, all different things in the world that were so beautiful that I was grateful for.
Yeah.
And it started to change my life. It wasn't just nature. It was the girl that I chatted with at the Walgreens counter every day that I went there to pick up drugs for one of my family members. You know, how much I loved seeing her and her smile and our little interaction.
Wow.
Um, you know, I don't know, all kinds of different things. And I really noticed everything shifting. And I thought, oh, for goodness sake, there's something about this. I'm so annoyed. And so with that said, I felt like I needed to help others
Yeah.
tap into this whole what I called a silly gratitude thing.
Yeah.
So, I just recently created a gratitude journal called A Sprinkle of Gratitude
Wow.
that I'm super excited about. And even though I didn't create them in conjunction, I've found that their work for me, I've been doing it. They're working very well together. I also, yes, I just created, this just came out, the Sprinkle Effect card deck that I am obsessed with. It's 52 cards, and each of the sprinkles, quote unquote, in my book have 3 cards, a journal prompt, an affirmation, and a quote. And I got a little guidebook. You can use them a few different ways, but what I found is and they of course look like my sprinkles and stuff, yeah. I'm a
Listeners, you are
you can't see, I'm sorry.
no, but I'm gonna describe they're gorgeous, they're white with all different colored sprinkles on them, with a beautiful pink font. Debbie and I clearly are both fond of pink. I'm in my pink era for the first time in my life.
Woohoo.
Yeah, the deck, so I'm looking at it says, I
Oh,
think possibility, and you
yeah,
didn't have a card
this one
here.
is no, yeah, I'm showing you the sprinkle
Possibility
of possibilities and the
or
quote, the journal prompt, and the affirmation. And
or
so and you don't need to have both, but what I'm saying is I've been using them because, of course, I'm not
yeah,
selling something that I don't believe in, right?
sure.
So I've been using them, and in the gratitude journal, you pick a sprinkle of the day.
Uh-huh.
So you can look at the list, and the cards come with a list, and the gratitude journal does as well.
Yeah.
And you can look and think, okay, what's going on in my life today? How do I feel? What do I need more of? Do I need more adaptability today? Do I need more direction? And then I choose that. I write down what the affirmation is. I read the quote. There's a place in the gratitude journal to answer the journal prompt
Yep.
from the cards.
Mhm.
And then there's some other gratitude questions, but I I just am loving it. I'm loving it.
I love that. And then do you do public speaking about this? Like, I'm feeling like sprinkle circles where, like, folks get together, like, are you doing that type of thing?
I'm not doing any kind of individual coaching or group coaching thing at the moment. Public speaking for sure.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, do have my own podcast called the Maybe I Can podcast. And so getting out there in that way to try and reach really as many people as possible and shake them and say, "You can do it. I was you. I know
Yeah,
you can. No
yeah,
matter what's going on in your life, no matter how rough it is, no
yeah,
matter how old you are, you got this."
yeah. No, I'm feeling inspired. I'm like, I have some projects that I'm like, need to be moving, and I'm like, "Oh, goodness, okay."
You got it.
This is so good. So how can people get your books? How can they support you?
The best place to find me is my website. It's Debbie R. Weiss. You got to put the R in. So DebbieRWeiss.com. And then from there, you can find everything, the books, the social media, you know, all the stuff. It's there.
Okay. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that so I do always like to end with what are you grieving and what are you grateful for? Um, but I think I just want to ask you what you're grateful for.
Oh my goodness.
It's right
I
now, today.
honestly, I'm not kidding. This is going to sound contrite, but it's not. Just talking to you, being able to, you know, look at your vibrancy and note that the fantastic pink, purple, white hair you got going on in those glasses. I just I find it maybe it's my age. I find it so special that
Mm.
I could be sitting in my house and you could be sitting in your house,
Yeah.
and we're in completely different places and we've never met before and we can connect like this. I
Yeah.
mean, I love it. It just
Same.
makes my day to meet people
Yeah.
like you.
Same. Same. So, yes. So, everyone, so you heard the website. Are you on social media at all?
Yep, yep. I'm
Okay.
on Instagram, it's debbie.r.weiss,
Okay.
and, TikTok and Facebook, all the things,
All the things. Okay.
everywhere. Oh, yeah.
Great. So everyone get the books. I know I'm getting the cards for sure and the gratitude. Sounds like amazing gifts for people. Yeah, I'm super excited. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has truly, truly been great.
Thank you, Zoe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, if today's episode spoke to you all, and I know it did, because like I said, I'm totally inspired, um, share it with somebody who might need a little light on their path. Share Debbie's website with folks. And so next week, we're going to be talking with the women of Healing Equity United, and they are going to be talking about the grief that people working in social change movements are experiencing right now, particularly people working in the domestic violence space, the racial equity space. And so we're going to be talking about some of the answers that they have around what's happening right now and what they're doing to find joy, weaving joy into their organization and helping other people weave joy into theirs as well. So until then, don't forget to breathe, don't forget to hydrate, and don't forget to keep coming back to the brink because, as I always say, none of us deserve to be on the brink alone. I am Zoe Flowers, and I will talk with you soon. Bye.